The Traptrix Structure Deck, Beware of Traptrix, is a very powerful deck on its own, especially if you combine 3 of them into one. However, it can get a whole lot better. There is a lot that is missing from this deck, mainly cards that are that you put in the extra deck. This deck only comes with the Traptrix extra deck monsters, which, while are powerful, aren't as good as some other options. So in today's video, we're going to look at the best cards to go out and buy to add to your Traptrix Structure Deck. Of course, before getting any of these cards, you do really want to get 3 copies of this deck. None of these cards are going to be that fantastic unless you already have 3 copies of the Traptrix Structure Deck, but once you've done that and you've seen my video on how to combine them, you definitely want to add a few of these cards. So the first card that we really want to talk about is one of the core cards of the Traptrix deck. It is used in every Traptrix deck, but unfortunately does not come with the structure deck, and that is Parallel Exceed. Parallel Exceed has the very useful effect to special summon itself from the hand when you perform a link summon. This is extremely easy to do with the Traptrix deck, as we have one of the most easiest Links monsters to link summon, that being the Link 1 Traptrix Sarah. Parallel Exceed then, when it's summoned, will allow you to special summon a second Parallel Exceed from your deck. And when Parallel Exceed is special summoned by the effect of Parallel Exceed, its level becomes 4 and its attack and defense become halved. This means that with a single Parallel Exceed in hand and you special summon Traptrix Sarah, you can then go into another copy, and you can then go into 2 copies of Parallel Exceed, which will both be level 4 monsters, allowing you for a very easy free rank 4 Xyz monster, or gives you 2 extra monsters to go into a link summon. The Traptrix Structure Deck arguably comes with the best trap hole cards. However, there are a couple others that you may want to look into to add to your deck. All trap hole cards should basically be run at 1 copy, except for Floodgate Trap Hole and Gravedigger's Trap Hole, which may be better to run at 1 or 2 copies, but every other trap hole card is good to have 0 to 1 copies of, because they are very easily searchable by the Traptrix deck. So some other inclusions to your Traptrix deck may be Treacherous Trap Hole. Treacherous Trap Hole is a very strong removal card, allowing you to target 2 monsters on the field and destroy those targets, but the downside is that you have to have no traps in your graveyard in order to use it, meaning that if you trigger Yrythaela's effect and detach your Traptrix Yrythaela, then Treacherous Trap Hole will no longer be viable for multiple reasons, because you'll have 2 traps in your graveyard. Even if you don't have Yrythaela, Yrythaela's effect will trigger sending a trap hole to the graveyard. However, Treacherous Trap Hole is definitely a very useful card and can be activated with Yrythaela's effect to destroy 2 monsters on the field. Next up, Timespace Trap Hole. Timespace Trap Hole is arguably one of the most powerful trap hole cards. This card provides non-targeting, non-destruction removal, allowing you to shuffle monsters into the deck. When your opponent special summons a monster, they get shuffled right back into the deck. A similarly good option, depending on the meta, is Network Trap Hole. This card can only be activated when your opponent special summons a monster from the main deck or graveyard. That monster then gets banished face down. This works good against certain decks, such as, say, Eldritch or Prank Kids, for example, but it really depends on what you're going to go up against. It may be better for the side deck. Another good trap hole card is Break Off Trap Hole. Break Off Trap Hole is basically a weaker version of Torrential Tribute, however it does have the benefit that it is searchable by your Traptrix cards. A couple other core cards to include in this deck is Infinite Impermanence and Pot of Prosperity. Infinite Impermanence is a very good fit for the Traptrix deck, almost perfect in that it is a hand trap. Infinite Impermanence is a great disruption card that can be used from your hand if you have no cards on the field, which makes it a very good card if you are unfortunately going second. You can use Infinite Impermanence to negate some of your opponent's cards, and if you set it first, then it also negates some of their spell and trap cards. Pot of Prosperity is another great addition to the deck, as it will allow you to more easily search for your very heavily relied on starter cards, you know, your Murmaleo, your Mantis, your Yrythaela, or even just search for a powerful trap to add to your field. Other good cards to include are, of course, the hand traps. Any hand trap is a great addition to any deck. My top recommendations for the Traptrix deck will be a Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, which does come with the structure deck. Nibiru, the Primal Being, is always a great card to disrupt your opponent's special summoning. Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, and finally Dimension Shifter. Dimension Shifter works well with Traptrix, as we have a lot of ways to utilize our banished Traptrix monsters, so even if our cards get banished, it doesn't matter so much. All of these cards are really great at disrupting your opponent, which is what the Traptrix deck is all about, so I would highly recommend getting any copies of any of these cards and just trying it out depending on what your opponents are likely to use. These cards are all very good to use. I would especially recommend Nibiri the Primary Being as it can be added to our hand, which I will talk about later, but first let's talk about Lord of the Heavenly Prison. This card, you don't have to run it, it's not mandatory, but a lot of Traptrix deck will run 2 copies of Lord of the Heavenly Prison. Lord of the Heavenly Prison, usually played at 2 copies, allows us to protect all of our set cards from destruction, which will easily stop. This effect alone will prevent a Harpy's Feather Duster or a Lightning Storm from wiping out our entire back row, especially if we have a hand that is full of trap cards to set on the field. Lord of the Heavenly Prison is a great addition that will protect those. It also is a very easy to summon monster with 3000 attack, allowing us to have a big monster to not only break an opponent's powerful board, but also just to go for the finisher on our second turn. Lord of the Heavenly Prison also has another effect when he's special summoned by his own effect, which will allow you to set a spell or trap directly from the deck, but it will be banished during the end phase of the next turn. However, similar to Yrythaela, this effect that banishes the card can be prevented with the effect of Traptrix Mantis, returning the card to our hand, allowing us to reset it. But it can also be used to set spell cards from our deck that can be used right away, such as cards like Fusion Destiny, but it can also be used to set Imperial Order, which will need to be bounced by Mantis's effect, which will prevent our opponent's spells from being played. Unfortunately, Imperial Order is banned right now, but if it comes back, it is a perfect addition to the Traptrix deck. Next up, some other traps that you might want to include depending on your playstyle are Torrential Tribute, Compulsory Evacuation Device, Dimensional Barrier, Solemn Judgment or Solemn Strike, Ice Dragon's Prison, and Heavy Storm Duster, and Lost Wind. These cards are all really great for disrupting our opponent's plays, just wiping out their entire board and getting rid of any pesky cards. Another thing to note about Torrential Tribute is that it works very well with Traptrix Rafflesia. Traptrix Rafflesia will prevent our other Traptrix monsters from being destroyed by card effects, which is fantastic. This also means that Needle Sealing is another great card that you might want to include in your Traptrix deck, and a lot of people do. Needle Sealing and Torrential Tribute are two of the best traps in the game, but most people don't play them because they destroy their own board, but thanks to Rafflesia, we don't have to worry about that. Other cards you may want to include in your Traptrix deck are just some basic floodgates that work really well with the deck. I would highly recommend playing a Antispell Fragrance. This card will heavily disrupt your opponent's plays, stopping them from playing spells on their first turn, and since the Traptrix deck hardly runs any spells at all, you don't really run any spells, Antispell Fragrance doesn't really stop us. The only time where we'll need our spell cards will be on our first turn anyway, so having an Antispell Fragrance is a really good addition to the deck. Other cards may include Imperial Iron Wall to put in the side deck, or just to go up against decks like Kashtera that have a lot of banishing. You may also want to include Performer Power 5 Rainbow Magician. 5 Rainbow Magician is not normally a good card, but with the Traptrix deck we do tend to set a lot of spell and traps. So 5 Rainbow Magician, if you have 4 or more cards set in your spell and trap card zone, the attack of the monsters you control become double their original attack, which is similar to Adipus, really good for just getting out the OTK. And one final card that you may like to include in your main deck is Grave of the Super Ancient Organism. This card isn't as good, but it's like Skill Drain, except it only affects level 6 or higher special summon monsters on the field. Those monsters can't declare an attack, nor can they activate their effect. This of course doesn't affect Link monsters, and it doesn't affect Xyz monsters, so it's not really the most useful card in the game, but against certain decks, it can definitely be very, very helpful. Next, let's talk about cards to add into the extra deck. Of course, we have cards like Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Skyfunder, which is always going to be a great card and definitely a good inclusion, but other cards to consider are Link Spider or Salamangreat Almirage. Probably more likely to play Link Spider, which can be summoned by using your Traptrix Holueta or your Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine. If you run that, those cards will be treated as a normal monster while they're on the field. And Link Spider is very important in your extra deck when you combine it with Parallel Exceed, allowing you to go into different monsters in your extra deck. Another very powerful card for the Traptrix extra deck is Time Thief Redoer. I would highly recommend running one copy of Time Thief Redoer. The reason is because the reason that we run Time Thief Redoer is because we play 3 copies of either Traptrix Holy Wetter or Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine. Having these cards to go into Time Thief Redoer will allow Time Thief to automatically have his trap-based effect. So if he has a trap card as material, then you can use his effect to place 1 face-up card your opponent controls on top of the deck, and then of course if he has a monster as material, you can use his other effect to banish him until the end phase. These effects are both fantastic, especially that trap effect, which will be very useful and makes Time Thief Redoer a very great card for the Traptrix deck as opposed to using him in other decks. Other cards you may like to include is a Utopia package, including number 39 Utopia, Utopia Double or Nothing in the main deck, and Pentastag to give him piercing damage. And of course you could also include up to 1 copy of all of the Nightmare cards plus IP Masquerena to go with them. The Nightmare cards just provide a lot of really good, they're really good in basically any deck to just get rid of any pesky cards, any cards that may get in the way, just to really control your opponent's field a little bit more. Finally, some last great additions to your extra deck I would recommend. If you are running Lord of the Heavenly Prison or Nibiru, you could consider running Gallant Granite. Gallant Granite has the effect to add 1 rock monster from your deck to your hand. Since Traptrix go really well with Lord of the Heavenly Prison and Nibiru, Gallant Granite can be considered playing up to 1 copy of in your extra deck, just if you have extra room in your extra deck, and then of course you can use him to go into Divine Arsenal Zeus. Another good card is number 41, Guska the Terribly Tired Tapir. Guska is really great in any deck that can make a rank 4, especially in a control deck like Traptrix. When Guska is on the field in defense mode, all monsters on the field will be switched to defense mode and will not be able to activate their effects. This will allow you to control your opponent's plays a lot more, stop their effects from activating, which will really allow you to get off all of your trap hole cards. Your opponent won't be able to stop them very much, and will just prevent that from happening. And of course, once you trap hole all of your opponent's cards, you can then go into the OTK on your next turn. And the final card to include in your extra deck is up to 1 copy of Abyss Dweller. Depending on the meta that you're going against, Abyss Dweller will prevent any effect in the graveyard from activating. This can be an amazing effect to stop your opponent's entire strategy. Also stops cards like Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer or Despian Tragedy, Mirror Jade the Iceblade Dragon, among other things. Abyss Dweller is always going to be a great card in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. There are a few other packages that you can include to supplement your Traptrix deck, but for a pure Traptrix deck, that list that I just gave is probably the best option. And then of course there are generic rank 4 XCs that you can go into, such as Castel the Skyblast Musketeer, Tornado Dragon, Silent Honorarch, you know, just the usual sort of stuff, Exciton Knight, Giant Hand, that sort of thing, any rank 4 XCs monster that you might want to go into. But including these cards that I have just listed into your Traptrix deck will very much power up your deck and just allow you to be a lot more competitive, because on its own the Traptrix Structure Deck, while it is very powerful, it doesn't have much that it can do for the end game. So using these cards will really help to boost your end game up and just be able to go for the kill and just protect your cards, search for more, control your opponent a lot more. So if you have any other suggestions to add to the Traptrix Structure Deck, please do let us all know down in the comments. Share your knowledge, give this video a share to share my knowledge as well, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thank you all so very much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments, and be sure to check out my previous Traptrix videos, including how to play the Traptrix Structure Deck, how to combine 3 of them into 1, what are the combos of the Traptrix deck, and more. So thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. My name has been Senkara, and until next time, see ya.